We're just 1 week away from the very first college football playoff rankings of the 2025-26 college football season. So we will, of course, give you our rankings projecting what the playoff committee is going to do next week. So this will be the final time that I do a top 25 like this. Although the top 25 you're about to see, which is totally resume based, is going to be very similar to what the committee is going to put out, in my opinion. Of course, we'll find out for sure next week. But it'll be this, but then I will have to tweak it for the committee bias, because we know that it's going to be there. And sometimes you don't figure out until you see the first couple of weeks of rankings what they are going to look at more than other things, or what conferences they're going to value more. You never know for sure what that's going to look like, but we'll try to make our best guess next week. But again, we're getting to the top 25 this week. This is all based off of what teams have done, what they have earned, their resume. We're no longer to that point where we're trying to figure out who the best teams are and who would win if they played head-to-head, things like that. It's all based on what you've earned, which is the way I believe rankings should be as you get later into the season. Of course, early on when teams are playing schedules that are so much different, it is kind of, you are trying to figure out who the best teams are. But let's just jump right in, and we'll start at the bottom. 21 through 25. So I've got Memphis ranked at 25, Tulane at 24, Michigan at 23, USC 22, and Oklahoma number 21. Oklahoma, USC, and Michigan. I think you're looking at the head-to-head there. Oklahoma beat Michigan. USC beat Michigan. That's why those teams, in my opinion, need to be ranked ahead of Michigan. Oklahoma and USC was really, really close when I was looking, because they both have really good wins over Michigan. And then they don't have much else other than that. Their losses are kind of similar. The difference, really, Oklahoma has a win over Auburn. That's not a great win, but it's better than USC's second best win. So USC is really lacking that second win. Michigan has a win over Nebraska. They have a dominant win over Washington. So resume-wise, just looking at wins, Michigan has 2 wins better than Oklahoma and USC. So if you just want to look at the wins, you could. But I think you also have to look at the head-to-head. The head-to-head has to matter here when teams have similar resumes and they have the same number of losses. You look at Tulane, they have a win over Duke, and their only loss came to a top 10 Ole Miss team. Memphis lost to UAB. That's a bad loss, but their starting quarterback got injured, I think, pretty early in that game, if I remember correctly. And so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt a little bit there. And they've got a win over South Florida. That's a very solid win. It doesn't really mean much now, but they also have that win over Arkansas. It is an SEC team, but obviously Arkansas is not very good. But still, I think Memphis, that win over South Florida is just enough. And the fact that they've only got 1 loss, that's enough to get them ranked. I think that the actual rankings, I'd have to look at them again. I believe they had Memphis ranked and not Tulane, which I don't agree with that, especially when you look at who these teams lost to. I think Tulane should be ahead of Memphis. But anyways, let's move on to 16 through 20. It really, for some of these teams, the resumes are still lacking so much that you have to look at who they lost to, who has the better losses. That's why Tennessee and Utah are ranked, because they really don't have. I mean, you look at Tennessee, their only win is Mississippi State. You look at Utah, they have the win over Arizona State, which is a solid win, but they didn't have Sam Leavitt in that game. So how much do you value that? It's really tough to figure out where to rank Tennessee and Utah. But Tennessee lost to 2 top 10 teams. Utah lost to 2 top 10 teams. That's why they're ranked where they are, despite teams ranked behind them with better wins. But they've also got losses to worse teams. Texas has that win over Oklahoma. That's really carrying them right now. They have the win over Mississippi State. The loss to Florida. Again, remember, a team that's not even ranked. But then the other loss coming to Ohio State, so that's a good loss. So Texas, I think, should be ranked based off of what they've done. Louisville has the win over Miami. They have a win over Pitt. Those are pretty good wins. You look at Virginia, they've got the win over Louisville, so head-to-head has to matter here. But does it matter enough? I mean, Virginia did lose to NC State. We saw them barely beat North Carolina. Do I think if they played today, Virginia would beat Louisville? No, I think Louisville wins that game. But again, you have to. I'm having a hard time not going with the head-to-head in this scenario. The teams have the same number of losses. It's not quite enough of a difference, but Louisville, I think, clearly does have the better wins here. All right, let's move on to 11 through 15. Cincinnati at number 15. They just keep climbing up these rankings. They have the win. So the thing about Cincinnati is they don't have a great win, but they've got 2 wins over 3 lost teams, and they have 2 wins over 4 lost teams. Again, those are not great wins, but they're solid. They've got a win over Iowa State, UCF, Kansas, Baylor. These are conference wins, and you pile enough of those up, it looks pretty good. And now they have a convincing win over Baylor. Cincinnati just continues to climb up here. Houston's only loss came to a top 10. Yes, I'll go ahead and give that away. A top 10. Well, I guess you already know that. Top 10 Texas Tech team. They have a couple of wins over 3 lost teams, Arizona and Arizona State. And that one over Arizona State on Saturday, that was huge. So Houston moving way up in the rankings. You've got Notre Dame with the 2 losses, but to top 10 teams, win a convincing win over Boise State, a convincing win over NC State, also a top 25 win over USC. So despite the 2 losses, they've got so the difference in Notre Dame and then Tennessee and Utah. So all 3 of those teams, they lost to really good teams. But you see, I've got them ranked in different spots. It's because of the wins. Notre Dame has much better wins than Tennessee or Utah. That's why you see Notre Dame ranked where they are. Vanderbilt ahead of them. So Vandy is starting to put together a decent resume. They've got now this win over Missouri. That's a 2-loss Missouri team. The LSU loss, though, the LSU win, I should say, does not look as good now. So, what do you do with Vanderbilt? Their only loss coming to Alabama, a top 5 team. So they just continue to move up. Georgia Tech, undefeated, still lacking a signature win. They've got wins over Wake Forest, Duke, and Clemson. But being undefeated at this point has to matter. I mean, it just has to if you've got wins over Power 4 opponents. And BYU is kind of in that same boat. They're at number 10, 8-0. They don't have a signature win, although the win over Utah, I guess they do. Yeah, Utah is this is a top 25 team. Wins over Arizona and Iowa State. Those are decent wins as well. And like I said, they're undefeated. They just win football games, and that's what you have to do. Miami started kind of slow against Stanford, but I think that was 7-7 at halftime, right? So then they were down. They were down 7-0, and they scored before the half. But they did finish strong, and they wound up blowing them out. But you look at their resume, it's still pretty good. They've got a win over Notre Dame, a win over South Florida that was a convincing win, and also Florida and Florida State as well. So Miami still has enough wins, and their loss came to Louisville, who is now a top 25 team, of course. Miami's still ranked pretty high. And now, if that Stanford game had gone differently, I'd probably have them ranked a little bit lower. Texas Tech, their only loss came to Arizona State in a close game. And why I still have Texas Tech ranked this high, they've got convincing wins over Houston and Utah. So 2 top 25 teams, and those games weren't even close. And that, again, has to matter of how you win these games. So I think Texas Tech's still really good despite that 1 loss. And then we've got Oregon and Ole Miss. So Oregon is really lacking a resume right now. Best win is Northwestern. Went over Penn State, went over Rutgers. That's it. But their only loss came to Indiana, who's arguably the best team in college football right now. And they were able to win against Northwestern and Rutgers pretty easily. So I think, again, you have to look at the loss when you're comparing some of these teams. I think Texas Tech clearly has better wins than Oregon. Miami has better wins than Oregon. But Oregon's only loss came to, again, like I said, maybe the best team in college football. Ole Miss continues to build their resume with this win over Oklahoma. That's a very good win. A top 25 win over Tulane now. LSU doesn't look as good, but still that's a decent win. And their only loss came to Georgia. And that's a game where they led most of the way. So Ole Miss, like the top 6 for me, it's clear. Maybe you want to move a couple teams around. You could do that, but the top 6 is clear, and this is the top 5. Georgia, Alabama, Texas A&M, Ohio State at 2, and Indiana at number 1. I think you could, so Alabama and Georgia, I think pretty clear why I have them there. Alabama has such a strong resume, the best resume in terms of wins for a 1-loss team, and I don't think it's even close. And Georgia has Tennessee and Ole Miss. Those are really good wins. Also went over Auburn, and their only loss came to Alabama. So those are, it's pretty obvious. Now, I think Indiana pretty clearly should be number 1 because of the way they're beating teams and the fact that they have a win over Oregon. That is by far a better win than anything Ohio State or Texas A&M have, or not by far, but it is better than what they have. And so really the argument to me right now comes down to Ohio State, Texas A&M. Who should be number 2? And it's very close. I think Texas A&M has piled up more quality wins, but Ohio State's wins are just a little bit better. So you look at Ohio State, wins over 2-loss Washington and 2-loss Texas. Texas A&M's win over Notre Dame, that's their win over a 2-loss team. And then you go to 3-loss teams. Texas A&M has the win over LSU. Ohio State has Illinois and Minnesota. So I think Ohio State for now gets the nod, but if Texas A&M can add, maybe one more quality win, I think Texas A&M next week could potentially jump ahead of Ohio State. We'll see. I don't even remember who Texas A&M plays or if they even do play this week, but that'll be an interesting debate. I think Indiana has almost locked up that number 1 spot. As long as they keep winning convincingly, I don't think a team can pass them. I believe Ohio State's number 1 in the AP poll. I don't agree with that, although if they played today, I'd probably take Ohio State. I think they're probably a better team, but I think Indiana has been more impressive and has done more on the field to deserve that number 1 spot. So how would you rank the teams? Let me know down in the comments below.